Okay, welcome everybody. This is Central County Services. We are here talking about all things behavioral health. We have Kristen Zychek and Carlos Sanchez with us. So we welcome any questions you may have throughout the presentation. Just pop them in below. We will monitor those and answer them as appropriate. So let's go ahead, guys.
Okay, like Monica said, hi, I am Kristen Zychek, one of the behavior analysts. And so we are asked all the time, every day, questions on behavior, working with loved ones, working with kids. So we decided to take a stab at it, and so that's where we will start.
So let me ask you the first question. Why does my child do the things he or she does?
So when I work with family or staff, the first thing that we always talk about is the function or root issue of the behavior. When we talk about function, are they trying to get something, an activity or an item? Are they trying to escape a situation, a person? Are they trying to avoid something? So we really look at what is the person wanting or trying to get out of. And that's the first thing we look at and talk with our families about, the function of the behavior.
So why does my child need reinforcement every single day?
And so the reason for reinforcement, again, reinforcement very briefly, is to make something happen more often. And reinforcement tells them what we want them to do. So when you think about it in those terms, why do we do it every day? Or why do we ask our families to do it every day? Is because we want you to consistently tell them what you're expecting of them. By sharing that with them, they understand what they need to be doing, because we all want to know what we're supposed to do, not just what we're not supposed to do. And the consistency, the higher frequency, doing it more and more is more likely to help them retain it and also encourage them to do it more and more often.
So what do I do if my spouse is not on the same game plan as me?
So we actually go through that often. That also happens, in our homes. It's life, right? So we talk about it with families, and even when different things happen amongst staff. We talk about, what is when one spouse wants to do the plan and the other one doesn't. We really dive into what are your reasons for not wanting to do it. Sometimes it's because we don't understand. Sometimes we don't agree. A lot of times, it's just questions that we have that we can answer. And we always try and find common ground between the spouses, between the staff, so we can implement the interventions to help the people that we work with develop new types of behaviors and adaptive skills.
So I'm rewarding my child with stuff and that he likes, but he's not very motivated to earn it. So what am I doing wrong?
So I think a lot of times what happens is we don't know accurately what truly motivates the child, and it's a matter of finding reinforcers, things that they want, that they actually will work for, are willing to work for. And a lot of times when we do our inventories, we try and rank them. Are these really strong, powerful motivators, like the big things, like, hey, we're going to do a trip to Disney, or something like that, or are these small things like the lollipop? And I use those examples, but to just let you know, sometimes the lollipop is the big reinforcer. So you just have to really know your child, and some of it's trial and error, but we do actual assessments to try and figure out what will motivate them to do that. And if it's not motivating, then it's probably not strong enough to make them want to do the things that you're asking them to do. And so I know a lot of families, they'll tell me, hey, I don't want to be giving them this prize or McDonald's every other day or whatever it is. And so we have to have a discussion about the strength of the reinforcer, because if we're not using something strong enough, even if we don't want to have to go to McDonald's every day, then you're not going to see those results. And so we kind of go back to square one. And what is our goal? If our goal is to increase like safe behavior, or which is what we do on our crisis team a lot. So we just kind of let the parents know this is what I guess the pros and the cons. You're going to have success by doing these things that have enough power to motivate, or you won't. So it's just kind of
We talk a lot about preferred items versus items that will be strong enough to be reinforcers. That's what Carlos sort of said. So an example of that is someone asked me to clean my room. They say, Kristen, clean your room for a Diet Coke. I'd be like,
I'm all in.
no way. Like, no way. But if you say, Kristen, clean your room for coffee, I'll clean my room 5 minutes ago. You know, even though I like Diet Coke and I drink it every day, coffee for me is that much stronger than Diet Coke. So even though someone likes something, it might not be powerful enough to be a reinforcer. And our goal is always to help our families find 5, 10, 15, 20 items, you know, that the kid prefers or likes or finds reinforcing. So you're not just having to give them a French fry every day, right? Or their gaming systems aren't their only thing that they'll work for. Does that make any sense? I'm talking as if you're talking back to me. Am I clear? Does that make any sense?
makes sense to me.
Makes perfect sense. So, how do I get my kid to listen to me and exhibit proper behavior?
So when we work with families, the first thing that we always start with is the relationship, caring, and bonding. You have to have a good relationship with the child. We do a lot of games. We do a lot of fun pairing activities. The kid has to know that you are a giver of good things, and you'll also be a giver of directives. Like, you'll say good things, and you'll say things that they need to work on. So when we worked on that bonding and caring, we start small, and we give like one-step directives. Go put the book up. Good job, thank you. You put the book up when I asked. And we go on from there. We use a lot of verbal praise. We use different types of reinforcement systems. But it's really about the staff or the parent or the person being a deliverer of good things as well as the directives. A lot of times at home, I'll go home and I'll take data on myself and I'll be like, Molly, do this. Molly, do this. Hey, get off of that. Do this. Go here. Do this. We're so late. I'm so stressed, you know. But I'm not being a deliverer of good things. So I have to keep that in mind. That sometimes I have to slow down and stop and be deliverer of good things to increase the probability that they'll listen to me when I need it. Or when I need them to.
So, let me ask a question as a parent. Why am I ignoring junk behavior?
So Carlos, maybe you should describe junk behavior.
Yes, so junk behavior is annoying behavior. It's frustrating behavior, but it's behavior that's not hurting themselves, it's not hurting others, it's not damaging property. Those are kind of the three things we look at. Are they hurting self, others, or damaging property? If they are, then you shouldn't ignore it. That's not junk behavior. But if they're yelling and screaming, if they're whining and fussing, which is my personal pet peeve at home, like crying, and it's hard to ignore, but the reason is that there are times we have to ask ourselves, what is the behavior that we're actually trying to change? What is the behavior we want to replace? And what is the behavior we actually want to happen? So if I want to replace the whining or the crying with compliance with like cleaning their room or something, then I want to focus my attention on that. I want to ignore that, because a lot of times we'll talk about fading, which is we ignore certain behaviors. If you ignore it, if you don't acknowledge it, that tends to go away. What's fading? So by paying attention to the behaviors we want and ignoring those junk behaviors, we're more likely to see those other behaviors happen sooner and more frequently.
Well, if we're talking about escalation too, if we're talking about escalation, you know, and I'm thinking about this as a mom, if we're talking about escalation, our kids do a lot of stuff and say a lot of stuff, right? And give us sassy comments to make us mad, right? To get us to blow up, for us not to be level-headed. So by ignoring that stuff that Carlos talked about, the crying, the whining, the cussing, by ignoring that, they're not getting a rise out of us. They're not making us mad, so we can't focus on what we need to do, which is making sure you're safe and your kid is safe. Now, we do work on junk behavior. Let's say we don't have dangerous behavior that we're working on. We do work on, you know, cussing and asking for things appropriately, but when we're talking about dangerous behavior, or behavior that's trying to get the parent's attention, we do talk about ignoring the junk stuff.
Yes.
So here's the big question of the day. Is it okay to spank my child?
And so let me start off with the disclaimer, because that's what you have to do with this kind of question, right? Is you give a disclaimer. So the answer is depends on how you do it and who you do it to, where you do it. We could go on forever.
Hopefully it's your kid.
Hopefully it's your kid. Don't be spanking anybody else's kid. Unless you have permission. So there's any caveats to that. So the answer is, can you spank? Here in Texas, the answer is yes, you can, as long as you're not creating injury. You're not causing bruises, scrapes, abrasions, and all that. That's very literally what CPS will look for, is are you causing injury to your child if you're spanking. I know CPS advises that if you do, that you don't use an object, you use your hand, so that you feel the force that you're using. We as a team do not use punishment in general, and obviously spanking is a punishment. Because we get results using reinforcement without the punishment, and punishment has a lot of complicating factors, as you can tell just by the answer that I'm trying to give you about spanking.
No, you're on point.
And so with punishment, you're going to have situations where it doesn't work. You're getting side effects. That's a good way of putting it. Side effects from the punishment. And as Kristen was just talking about, when we're reinforcing, we're trying to be a giver of good things. A lot of times, if you give punishment, you're going to have to give that much more effort to rebond and repair with your child or your individual that you're. If you're using spanking, it's going to be your child. But you're going to have to repair that relationship, even though you weren't being malicious and maybe it was deserved. But you still have to have a positive and healthy connection with your child.
The whole intent of punishment is just to get something to stop fast. Like if it's unsafe, if it's this. Punishment is not meant to be used for if we're embarrassed, right? Or if we're annoyed. Punishment is meant if it's an unsafe thing to do and you need to get it to stop. Now, I've spanked before. Everybody who has spanked, the side effects are the kid cries, the event drags on longer. And so we do not do punishment procedures unless there's a whole rigmarole of consents and all that kind of stuff. But what we are charged to do is show people like a new way of doing things. Spanking doesn't show someone what could do to lead them to reinforcement, or what to do to make friends, or what to do to finish their homework. So that's one of the differences between.
Yeah. I think one of those complicating factors with spanking, and I'm just going to say from personal experience, is what do you do if it doesn't work? A lot of times your inclination is to escalate the punishment. If you've already spanked, where do you go? And that puts you as the authority figure and as the parent in a really weird place that you don't want to be.
Because one time I laughed when my mom was spanking me, and then it just gets worse. And she's really mad. I didn't get more spankings, or they got to go to your room. It's a mess. It's a straight mess.
Okay, so I'm trying to handle this as a parent. So when is it time for me to get help?
So what we tell our families, anytime there's a behavior situation that you're concerned about, you don't have to be distraught, you don't have to be in crisis. Anytime there's a behavior situation with your loved one that you want more information about, or you want to talk to somebody about, or you're concerned will get out of control later down the road, it's time to call somebody and ask for help.
Always have to be a professional. We love it when people come to us. But as Kristen said, it can absolutely be a trusted friend or family that you value their input.
And we see all the time, families come to us in crisis, it's stressful, it's hard on everybody, and they're like, well, we just didn't think it was that bad, or it's not that bad yet. And I always tell my families, what does that bad look like? We're upset, we're stressed, you're crying, rightfully so, your kid is unhappy, there is no getting to a place that's too bad before you call somebody. Did that make sense?
I think so.
A little bit?
Okay.
Don't wait.
Don't wait.
Don't wait.
Don't wait. There's more.
One more. No, I'm playing. I don't know.
This works on one of my kids, but I got 2 kids, and they're completely different. But I'm in trouble with both of them. 2 different ways.
Yeah, so I think the answer is your kids, their personalities, their interests, their preferred activities, preferred people, that's all going to be different. And so even if you're struggling with the same behavior with both of your children, your strategies are going to potentially have to look very different. We talked about the different functions of the behavior. So one child's yelling might be to get out of homework. The other child may be yelling and cussing because they're hungry and they're trying to get food. And so you're going to have to take all of that into consideration, and you're going to have to really evaluate what it is what motivates one to replace that behavior and what motivates the other. And that can be a longer process than we'd like, but it can be done.
And my kids are the perfect example of this. You know, my oldest fears being wrong, doesn't want to disappoint when she does stuff wrong, whereas my younger one loves it when you're mad. So, you know, even though you can't use the same interventions on the 2 because they're just different people. They don't like the same thing. Even if you're siblings, even if you're twins, you don't like the same thing. Functions aren't the same. Dynamics aren't the same. And we just help our families see that.
So what if I'm trying to use one of these methods and my kid absolutely retaliates and just goes a whole nother level?
So we actually see that quite a bit in crisis, or families that are in fear of that in crisis.
We do. So I think my first reaction is that if it's you're always evaluating safety, and so if people aren't safe, then get help. Don't be afraid to call 911. Don't be afraid to call our hotline. Reach out, and if we're working with, that's one thing that we do when we start working with you is have a safety plan so that if things do escalate, you already know in advance. And 10 out of 10 times calling 911, calling for help is on that safety plan, because that's our number one priority is everyone's safety, both our clients, our kiddos, our adults who we're working with, but also caregivers and parents. Mm-hmm. Everyone's got to be safe.
And if our families are at the point where they're worried about, they have to tell their kids something and they're scared, right? They're scared to tell the kid to turn off the internet. That's a common one.
Yeah.
They're scared to tell their kid they can't have any more food. We need to work with the situation way before that to support the family or staff in having not control over their lives, but not getting to that point. That's what we work on. Unfortunately, that's a common thing that we talk about. Like Carlos said, we always evaluate risk. Like if you do this, what are the risks?
So what if my child has a fit in public? How do I address that with everybody watching?
So that one's, I'm not saying that's a little tricky because you got a lot of pressure on you, and as the caregiver, as the parent, we're social beings. We tend to pay attention to what other people think about us, and that makes it that much harder to respond calmly, to respond collectively. We wanted to have it. Ideally, you should have a plan for that behavior. If you already know it's an issue, have a plan in advance. So if we have a bunch of people they'll just drop, they'll fall on the floor, and some of them are pretty big. You're not going to be able to pick them up and carry them out. So you have to have a plan for how you're going to ignore that behavior. Be prepared to wait. I will say that you want to be careful not to just try and fix it right away. That's the temptation, right? Mm-hmm. Is to say, well, here, okay, fine. You want the candy, here's the candy. But now you've potentially
just shut your mouth.
Yeah, just be quiet, right? Everyone's staring. But if you do that, you're going to reinforce the tantrum. You're going to reinforce whatever behavior they're doing that you don't want them to do because they just got whatever it was that they wanted, or they just got away from the situation that they didn't want to be in. So I don't know if I'm answering that real well, but
no, you are. But I've told families too, as you go in the store, have 2 different things in mind and evaluate the situation. One, is this a behavior that you can ignore and you can safely ride out and get out of the store? No one has called the police or had kids taken away if their kids are crying or demanding candy and the mom's not giving it. okay? However, if you are concerned, like you have to judge it, use your parent or staff like innate decision making inside. If this is a behavior that you're not going to be able to ignore, they're going to throw something, they're going to pinch somebody's going to get hurt, it's going to escalate, then we have encouraged people to leave their carts, go in their vehicle, or go to a safe place. And so we usually have families keep two ideas in mind. Can you ride this out, or do you need to go call it quits? Now, as a mom, calling it quits will make you mad and frustrated and give you on time, but they're still not getting what they wanted, right? They're still not getting the soda or the pizza or the candy, whatever they wanted. You're just in a safe place. Now, you're going to have to go back to the store, but everybody is safe and they still didn't get what they wanted.
Yeah, and we've reminded families, we feel weird and guilty about leaving a full basket of groceries in the store. But if it gets to that point, then absolutely leave it there. The store will survive. The store is not depending on your one purchase. It'll be okay.
Okay, so that's the questions that we had for today's show. We appreciate everybody for joining us. If you would always like to ask additional questions, we do go back and look at this and answer questions at a later date. So if you're looking at it now or if you're looking at it later, please feel free to comment and we will get the responses to you as soon as possible or answer them on another live session. So please join us next time at our next Mental Health Minute, which will be next Wednesday at 2 o'clock. And just like to thank you, Carlos, for your time, and Christian for your time joining us on this live. Y'all have a great day.